Hey, good morning, folks. Todd.LIVE. We are going to do a live video and podcast recording for the Entrepreneur Live Video Show. This podcast will drop next Wednesday, but today you get to enjoy it live, and I have none other than live video expert Jeff Adams on today. So let me get the Let me get the podcast going, Jeff, and we'll be up and running.
Alrighty.
Hey folks, Todd.LIVE. Today we have Jeff Adams in the studio.
You are listening to Entrepreneur Live Video with Todd.LIVE, broadcasting from sunny Southern California. This is the place where the most talented online live video personalities and marketers share what works for them as live video becomes the most effective megaphone to the world man has ever known. Without further ado, here is your host, Todd.LIVE.
And folks, he's not quite in the studio, but it certainly feels like it when I have about 6 screens pointing at me and they all have Jeff Adams and myself on them. Jeff Adams is somebody who is exceptional at live video and broadcasting. He's been doing it for live video for probably 10 years or maybe even longer. We were talking and he mentioned the earliest was around 2007 when he started getting into it, but he does have a broadcasting background, I think, in the music industry. We'll talk about that a little bit. He's a broadcaster, a speaker, a digital content creator. He's got multiple shows and works with multiple companies out there that are in broadcasting, helping them get going. He's perfected his craft, like I said, over a number of years. He's got a studio that is, you know, probably second to none. I mean, it is an amazing work. It takes up a good chunk of his living space, and he's going to talk about that. So let's just go ahead and bring him right on in. Jeff, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, yo. How you doing?
I'm great, my friend. It's so good to have you on. We've talked about it for probably about 2 months now, and we just, you know, sicknesses and holidays and traveling, and we just haven't been able to work it out, and I'm just so honored to finally have you on.
Thanks for having me. I know it's been a struggle getting on, and, you know, kid sickness and then scheduling and, you know, your schedule, my schedule, and so when you sent it, I said, you know what? We've been trying to do this for like the past 2 months. So I just went, click, we'll do it tomorrow.
Boom. Well, you know what? I told you when we were, you know, before the show started that I finally set up Calendarly instead of, you know, taking notes on an index card for my scheduling. And this is going to make it work. It's so much easier. I just send someone a link and there you are. And here we are. And, but I'm so glad to have you. So tell me, Jeff, you know, we talked a little bit about this before the show began. How'd you get started in all this? Because you've taken it, like, I feel like I've taken it to the level of insanity in some ways, and you've taken it much, much further. So tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, the journey is basically I was a frustrated creative. I worked in the music industry for 20 years. I started off as an artist, and then I got smart and said I need to make money, so I learned the art of music business. So I became a manager and had a label, but you know, with the artists, I mean, the artists were very creative, so I really couldn't speak a whole lot into what they were doing outside of the business. They didn't want me in the studio, and I missed broadcasting. I used to do, you know, radio when I was a teenager, and I missed it. So I started seeing all these like live stream platforms pop up, and there was one called what was it? Blog TV. And they were out of Israel, and it was the first thing you could pop up, and you could have a guest pop up, and there was a chat, and I was enthralled by it. I'm like, this is great. So, and at the time, Ustream launched, and you know, a platform called Mogulus, which is now Livestream. So I was testing these platforms out, and I said, this is really cool. So I started doing like a music industry show, and just got, you know, mesmerized by it. And you know, I always call it. You know, most people are on the journey. You're on the journey right now. Everybody's on a different journey with this live streaming, and you know, I call it it's you know the thing. You know, basically, it's I'll break it to you like this. I call it you know, sometimes like with the iPhone now. I'm using my iPhone right now, but I pop the iPhone up. That's like the gateway drug. So once you figure out you can go live with your phone, kind of the gateway drug to open up many things. Either you'll go, it's not for me. I didn't get enough high with that. And then from there, it escalates. Like, how can I get a better camera? How can I sound better? How can I do this? And then it becomes this overwhelming addiction of you've got to make things better. And it's to the point with live streaming. That's the thing. It's like, I don't think anybody can really perfect it as much as they try to, or what they preach. Because that's why I don't really say I'm an expert, because I fall on my face every time I do this. You know, there's something going on, or you know, there's something that happens in live environments. So I really just try to take it, you know, step by step. And when I turn everything on, I just hope for the best. You know, we did Wired yesterday. We taped Wired yesterday for a client of mine. It's a live streaming show. And we did bloopers. I actually had a blooper happen last week where I was doing Live Positive, show I do on BeLive.tv. And I was sitting here talking. I was, you know, on my chair. And I was like, I don't know why. I thought I was like sitting like I was sitting on a motorcycle. And the whole chair just went down like this. It went. So, you know, anything can happen. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. You're a pro, you're not a pro. Everybody is open to this thing because you're based on, you know, your bandwidth and your technology backing you up. I've had cats jump on my lap mid live stream. Yesterday I did a show. My fiance was crawling on the floor to give me a goodbye kiss. I said, just stand up. And I was live. I said, just give me a kiss so you don't have to crawl on the floor. So you have all these things that pop up at the times, but you just kind of deal with it. And that's what, you know, my love for live streaming will never go away, because it is an ongoing mission that you are never really going to get to. You're never going to perfect it. That's what I tell people. You're never really going to perfect it, because it comes down to your hosting abilities, to your production abilities. It's just an ongoing journey.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when I use the word expert, of course, I use it somewhat loosely, but you know what, I come from a legal background, and in the legal world, the title of expert can have a low bar setting, quite honestly. You just need to know more than the jury does about a given topic, and you can kind of call yourself an expert. But you're right. I mean, it's constant. Every broadcast, you know, it seems like I've never had a perfect broadcast, I don't think. There's always something that could have been a little better. I could have handled it better. The signal could have been better. The software could have been set up a little bit differently. Maybe it could be something like changing the date on an ad card that shows up at the beginning of the show. There's always something, and we're just always perfecting our craft. And like you said, it never ends. It's like a golf swing. It never ends. Right.
Absolutely. And yeah, just like I'm pointing out, I mean, you know, most people listen to this audio podcast, but I'm sitting here on the Facebook Live monitoring the thing, and I rearranged everything in the studio. So I haven't had a chance to adjust my lighting. And I'm like looking at the Facebook feed. I go, I'm so whited out. So if you see me adjusting, you know, turning over the side, I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to like adjust the lighting a little bit, because I like to look washed out. But I mean, that's the journey. I mean, when you're in the live stream environment, you're always tweaking. You know, you turn something on, you had the same settings on, something goes awry, you know, but it's a complete high for me. It always has been. The moment I hit live, wherever platform I'm using, I go live. It is just an experience. It's just you and the viewers. And it's magnificent. And, you know, podcasters, you know, we you know, since the podcast, you know, podcasters used to make fun of me 4 years ago. It's like, why are you doing this live stream, you know, show? But it was funny because I got contracted out by Spreaker. We started with Rob Greenlee. We started Spreaker Live, and we actually used to stream the video of the show 4 years ago. And then we did on Blog Talk Radio. I got hired to do the weekend podcasting as well. So podcasters used to always like, why are you doing that? How do you edit that? I go, I don't. I'm a broadcaster. It just stays as is. I don't edit the podcast. I just hit it live. It's the radio background. You can't go back and change things live on the air. You can change things on demand, but I've just never really been about changing, because live streaming, that's why people like it. It's real, it's authentic, and it's, you know, it's not over highly produced, and what you say stays out there forever. For me, I don't go back and edit things, because that's what people want to see. They want to see the mistakes. They want to see that you're real and you're approachable. You know, whatever mission that you're doing, marketing, or, you know, you're just doing a live stream show for entertainment. They want to see that you're just like them, and that's what makes live stream spectacular in my book.
I agree. And you can do all sorts of nice things to jazz it up. But again, like you said, people want the raw to some degree. You know, like you can have some nice lower thirds. You can put some frames on there. You could have some cool graphics show up here and there. But again, you know, people enjoy the raw. And as you start to use these things, little problems will exist and people are kind of learning with you. And a lot of the people in the audience just happen to be trying to do this same kind of stuff, or they have dreams of doing the same kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's what I always tell people. It's like, if you have a dream, just keep at it. I mean, I'm still pursuing the dream of this, and I'm fortunate enough, when I decided to leave the music industry, I've been doing this literally where live streaming is my only way I'm making money the last 3 years. And it, and I tell people that it's like, well, how do you do that? I go, well, do you really want to know? Because it's a straight grind. And let me tell you, I don't claim to be the best. I don't put myself out there as the best, because there's so many great people coming up through the pipelines. My whole business model that I was doing is a lot harder to do now because there's so many people doing it, great people doing it, and they do it extremely, extremely well. I mean, sometimes I look at myself and go, I quit. Like my buddies over at LiveX. I mean, they just literally, they produce a lot of professional live streams for a lot of businesses in New York. And my buddy Rob does a show every Friday, and it's, to rewind, everybody has like these shows about live streaming, where they like to talk about it. I think for me, for live streaming, talking about live streaming is so much fun because it's how it brings the community together, because we're all in this together. We're trying to figure things out. But I used to produce, host with Stephen Haywood on the Tech Buzz Network. We used to do Broadcast Now years ago, and it was the first live streaming show about live streaming. And I can literally say that because he came up with the idea. I said, that's brilliant. And all these manufacturers would send him gear, and it was a great show. It was way before its time. But now, the back to LiveX, these guys, they're producing 4K live streams for clients, but they have this TV set. It's ridiculous. I mean, the chairs, they have like 13 people producing this live stream show. If you love live streaming, maybe go to the LiveX page on Facebook. They do it every Friday, like at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But the production on the show is ridiculous. And I see things like that and I go, I quit. I quit. you know?
Well, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I Jeff, real quick, I just want to shout out to the audience just a little bit. We've had a few people come in. Jose Gonzalez, Jason Hoarders come in. I don't know who else is with us. Sometimes it's not always accurate telling me who's with us and who's not. But Jose's got a couple of questions. Jose, we'll get to your questions in a little bit, my friend. We will keep them on my screen here, and we'll address them here later in the show. Jeff, I wanted to ask you, when you got into this, what was the equipment you started with, and how fast were you adding to it and bringing up the audio and the video from the early days?
You have like this level where you want to hit. I think we all have someone that we look at and go, look, I want to get to where they're at. And I think for me was, and I go back. I mean, I will go back because I think every live stream person needs some type of mentor, whether it's just a friendship or it's like, hey, man, this is happening. I don't know what's going on. And Stephen Haywood, was that for me. I mean, he said, dude, you're really, really talented, but your production sucks. So I'm like, what? And I didn't know. I mean, and that's what I tell people all the time. It's like, when you view, he taught me a lot. He was just very, you could take it as like, okay, he's being really too hard, but no, he was honest. He says, you're really talented, but your production sucks. Everything about it sucks. I wouldn't watch that. He says, let's try to fix that. So he put a standard always in my head. And I still hear him to this day. It's like, I still hear him in my head, like, Jeff, that wasn't your best. I mean, we pre-produced a show yesterday and that wasn't my best. You have those days where you're not going to knock it out of the park all the time. But for me, I started off with a ATM switcher. And I had like a GoPro camera, and then I would take, I do all these hacks. I'd take Wirecast and do an output out to use a webcam. So I had additional cameras and do all this crazy stuff. But I was just like, the ATM was like, I think at the time it was like $9.99, the first version of it. And I wasn't happy with it. And then, I got Wirecast. I was playing with Wirecast. So the setup was, subpar. But then, Stephen Haywood, back to Stephen Haywood, we met in Vegas one year at NAB, and he said, we just had dinner and we hung out. He was like live streaming from the floor. He said, well, let me start producing your show. So it was a whole nother level for me. I'm like, man, someone really wants to produce my show. Wow, this is crazy. So, he just really took the bar up. So I really focused on doing what I do best. It's like host, and he would produce. We take phone calls. We did the Jeff Adams show, and then I started working on set design. I said, well, let me make my visuals look really well. So I started designing sets, and it just worked out great. And then my addiction became more and more. I wanted my hands more on equipment. So I got hired as a consultant for a rap station, and I created the whole live stream platform, and they brought it all into my house. So I built this whole system. And then from there, the addiction happened, and we started a new media company with 3 different partners 3 years ago. We had a commercial spot, and that place, I really condensed down with my gear since then, because you really don't need a lot of that. But I mean, we had anything imaginable in that studio when we were producing live streams 4 years ago for clients. So, but back to your initial question, you can literally start with anything, and that's the beauty of it. And people are too hard sometimes. People want to play the trolls and give people a hard time, like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. And everybody's on a different step in their live stream journey, and you can't knock people for going out there and doing what they do, because they're never going to learn anything if they don't fall down, and you got to let them fall down and not be so much a hard critic on people. You know what I mean? That's why, like, and BeLive and BeLivers group, there's a lot of new beginners that are doing this thing. And I show them nothing but love, because I know that was me at one time trying to like take my stuff to the next level.
Yeah, we have a member of the audience, Eddie Garrison, who's actually going to be on the show later today at 1 o'clock. He says, in the space, I see too many people comparing someone else's chapter 5 to their chapter 1. And that's exactly what you're saying here. We're all at different levels, and you're right. Nothing but love. You know what? I do tend to stress, though, in my podcast, I do tend to stress that, the first thing, if you're going to take it beyond the phone, is to really focus on the audio, right, and kind of start there, and then everything else kind of can fall into place. But like the audio and then the video, and like the lighting was the last thing for me, because it's kind of expensive. I wasn't sure how to do it. And I can still do a podcast and a live video without the lighting, but I can't do the podcast and live video without the audio and the video nailed. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that a good progression, like focus on the audio first and then worry about the video later?
Yeah, you're right. Audio is always number one. And with me, it was like having a podcast was like second thought, because I was a live streamer first. So when I initially dove into my audio, made my audio better in my live streams, like 9 years ago, I went backwards and started ripping my audio file off the video, and I went in the podcast world, and I realized with podcasting, I got a lot more numbers, a lot more traction. So, people were subscribing, because at the time that was really, really popular. It still is very popular. But yeah, audio is crucial. Number one, because you're so right about that, because what I tell people as well is, would you listen if you just did a Facebook Live and you're using a webcam microphone, and you might be getting, let's just say, 2,000 hits, you're pretty popular or whatever, right? And you rip it, you repurpose it. Would you listen to that podcast if you weren't on it? And most people said, no, I wouldn't. I said, so why are you repurposing this content without great audio? If you're going to have a podcast, make sure you have the right mics, make sure you have the right levels, and audio is so important to me. It's so important to me, because I came from the music industry, so I like a nice warm voice. And for podcasting, I always try to get my audio to almost a radio standard level.
Sure. So now, when you talked about that, you mainly talked about the audio level for podcasting. I'm assuming you feel the same way about the audio. Quality, not level, but the audio quality for a live video. You want it to be pretty much the same as podcasting if possible, correct?
Yeah, on the same level. And I mean, that's I tell people, it's like, look, you can, get a webcam, C920, but get your audio like your number one priority. And, if you like live streaming, but just get your audio, because if you're doing a podcast, you want to make sure your audio is there. I try to have the same standards. Now, I do make mistakes, because I have a lot going on here sometimes. And I stream to multiple platforms. So some platforms levels a little bit different than the other ones, and I have to go back there and adjust things, because people are, hey, you're a little hot. I might be over streaming at you now simultaneously, where I'm at Facebook, and I go, hey, you're a little hot, and I have to go adjust things. But outside of that, for me, it has to be the same, because that's when I hear nice audio candy in my ears, and then I see the visual elements to it. I'm like hooked. I'm like, okay, let's see what they're talking about here. When I see, you know, stuff that's struggling along, the audio's not so great, I can't listen to it, especially if there's no video to it. I'm like listening, I go, I can't listen to this. You know, it's like, you know, and that's just my personal preference. I can't listen to podcasts that doesn't have great audio. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. You know, when I got started, you mentioned something. Somebody says, "Oh, you're a little hot over here," and if you're live streaming to multiple platforms, I've found that almost always on one of the platforms, the audio is not as good, or the video is not as good, or maybe the audio and the video aren't syncing properly. And boy, that used to drive me nuts trying to solve all that. And the reality is that a lot of times you have no control over that. That's something going on out in the interweb somewhere. And you might be able to tweak it a little bit, but sometimes you don't have any control over that. And I learned early on, it took me a while though, but I learned early on not to sweat it, not to want to trash it and give up, and because it's just going to happen every time you go on. There's going to be variances across the different platforms.
Yeah, a lot of that, I tell people you have to mercy with these platforms because you're dealing with a, web RTCS as an audio source for a lot of these platforms like BeLive.tv or, YouNow, so you have to mercy. Like, when I was originally doing BeLive Weekly for BeLive.tv, I was like, oh, I'll just use my high-end equipment. And when we were first doing that, I had some great ones using my equipment, and then I realized the audio and video sync was off, and it was all WebRTC based. And it wasn't BeLive's fault. It wasn't my fault. It was just like the software didn't update with WebRTCS. They didn't update, or I didn't update something. So I was like, man. So I just started using just a webcam for that show. But I mean, a lot of times it is correct. It's, sometimes it's not my fault. It's WebRTC within the platform. And, because I mean, if I use this, with like BeLive, my audio is going to be a little bit condensed a little bit because it's their settings within how they set it. But it's all through WebRTCS that makes it happen, that I can use my audio or my webcam audio for that. So it's a lot. But, I still stream to multiple platforms, but for like the Jeff Adams show. But now I think we talk a little bit about this too. I did an experiment a couple of weeks ago, and I just went on these different mobile platforms, the platforms I could go on with my professional equipment. I did the same routine. I did like a 10-minute comedy routine, same material on all the different platforms. And I see how it worked, and I was just like, and I saw some, with the mobile apps, I was like, wow, I got a really good audience quickly. And I was like thinking like, man, but it's all about engagement at the end of the day when you're doing live and when you're talking to your audience. I find that when I can communicate with the audience in the chat, and look, like my camera right here and the monitor, I always see the chat that's going up, so I can do shows by myself and interact with the crowd that's watching. And since 2016 when Facebook opened up the live, I really concentrated on Facebook Live because a lot of my audience lived there anyways. So I like the engagement aspect of communicating, and it's a lot harder to do when you stream to different platforms because you're looking at YouNow, YouTube, and someone might get pissed off at Periscope, like they ain't paying attention. So I always say, hey, if you're watching this, come over. If you want to interact, come over to the Facebook Live because we're monitoring that chat. That way I'm not ignoring you. But people still get pissed off, like they're not, not looking at the chat.
Yeah, I'm with you there. In fact, I was, right now I'm able to monitor very easily Periscope, which is almost a waste of time because it just doesn't seem to be, the gory days are behind it, at least right now, it seems like. Facebook, but also YouTube. And our friend Gord Isman is over on YouTube by himself watching our broadcasts. And he did say hi to us. And he says, I'm just getting to, I'm just getting to the flow of live streaming. And I love the self-discovery that comes with having to go with the flow of your guests' engagement. So he's kind of echoing what we're saying there. And you're right. And let's talk a little bit about this, the, tri-casting or multicast. I tri-cast. I usually am YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope, but, multicasting, and you do lose on the engagement side. But do you think that the trade is worth it to have your content on the multiple platforms and to, for instance, between Facebook and YouTube, you don't have to somehow repurpose. Like if you're just doing Facebook, now you got to, if you want it on YouTube, you've got to spend some time working to get the right video quality and audio quality over onto YouTube and deal with all that? Or is it just nicer just to do it one time and it just is there?
Yeah, yeah. It really comes down to your content. What are you trying to do? Like, for interview shows, I don't get the tons of engagement because I'm worried about my guests and communicating with my guests and, asking the guest the next question or setting something up. So sometimes the chat gets neglected in that. And that's what I really tell people is I always say, like, I'm an old school guy. Most young people would say, what are you talking about? But, let's look at, the big major networks, NBC, ABC, CBS. I look at it as like that. I look at these platforms now as these networks that you can possibly take something and hit it. And when you multicast sometimes, and the best shows to multicast are like shows like this where it's like one-on-one or you're interviewing. It's more of a radio setting. That way you can get all, passing eyes and ears into what you're watching. But if it's more of a one-to-one show when you're relying on interaction with the audience, I say pick one platform and own it and destroy it. I mean, there's so many like mobile apps out there now with these new live streaming platforms that you just go with mobile. And I went on a couple of them and I spent 35 minutes there doing like internet streaming tips, and immediately, people just like started popping in and saying things. I was like, wow, if I just concentrate on this one platform with what I was talking about, I already have a built-in audience on that platform. So it's like, I say, find one platform, dominate on it. And then, look to say, do I want to syndicate my show to another platform? And, now that I have this one platform on lock, I have a really good audience engagement, and look at that, or create a whole different show for a different platform and do, if you want to do a YouTube live, do another show for YouTube versus doing it on Facebook, So it's really people's personal preference. And I've been really experimenting with that because I was always, hitting everything I did out, extremely everywhere as possible to get eyes and ears on what we were trying to accomplish. But I think it's everybody's personal preference of what type of show they're doing. And that's the beauty of it. Everybody has an opinion about live streaming. So whatever works best for you is what I tell them. I said, do you want to multicast? And they say, yes. I'm like, great,
Yeah, absolutely. Gord has a question for us, and I think we should address a couple of these questions before they get too deep. But Gord says, how important is containing the length of time for a live interview show? And he says, I guess this would also relate to your delivery objective show structure. So, what are your thoughts on the interview show format? I've always been like about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, if you're looking for engagement, I can tell you from experience doing interview shows like we'll just use Facebook because, I mean, a lot of people are doing that now. A talk show interview on Facebook, you might have ultimately, if you're not engaging with the audience on Facebook, your numbers are going to dwindle probably, if you're doing an hour show, probably 40 minutes, after the hour that you did it, and they start going down. You start losing momentum if you don't engage the audience. So it's really your personal preference of what platform you're using. Interview shows, to me, are starting to get a little mundane, and I'm looking at how I'm doing things now. It's like, how can I get more people to call the phone lines if I'm doing the Jeff Adams show, or engage the audience within the broadcast that I'm doing right now, and coming up with ideas that I can make the audience that are watching feel a part, and making sure, I'm acknowledging them. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but if you're just doing a regular guest interview, I normally say like 30 minutes. If you know what the questions you're going to, give to the guest, don't prolong it, or 15 minutes. But, if you're looking for, view counts or, impressions on Facebook, you probably want to go a little bit longer than 15 minutes, and 30 minutes. You might want to go 45 minutes.
Well, and I would add to it, especially since this is what we're doing, but we're recording this for podcast. So I think that also throws another element into it. Is it being recorded for podcast or is it not? On interviews on podcasting, I've had a lot of people have told me they love the hour format. The show that we're doing, Jeff, normally, I don't know if you've listened to my podcast or not, but normally on a daily basis, 6 days a week, it's a 15-minute show, no longer than 15 minutes. I try to make it between 5 and 10 minutes every day.
Right.
But, once a week, I drop a different kind of content, something that's a little more deep where they get to know somebody and to hear some fresh perspectives and that sort of a thing. So, again, I think it just boils down to, it's very, very subjective, and we could probably fill up a couple pages on a legal pad of all the considerations as to what you might think about when you're kind of dialing in your ideal time frame.
Yeah, you have a lot of those legal pads, don't you?
Not as much as I used to. I've been recovering for 10 years. So, and hopefully I'll add another 10 to it. I keep my bar membership fresh just in case, but I never envision doing that nonsense ever again. I like doing this kind of thing much, much more. We might have lost Jose on Facebook, but he had a couple questions, and he might come back on replay. In fact, I might reach out to him and tell him that we addressed his question. So he says, "Hey Jeff, I use Live Air Action by Teradek for iPhone and iPad. Great app platform for mobile cam, green screen, audio import. Your thoughts on the platform?"
All right, I'll be honest. I toyed around it when it first came out, and I've never really been a very big. I might slap myself on the face with this one for NAB stuff, but I've never really been, since I purchased products for a client, I've never really been a big fan of Teradek because a lot of their physical hardware would get warm and it would overheat and just crash on me. And so I never really, outside of that, and that was with 3 different products they had. Outside of that, I stopped looking at anything Teradek because I had, for clients that I built their systems for, I implemented Teradek in there and we had nothing but problems. And then the client got upset with me that the product wasn't working properly. So to each his own. If it's working great for you, fantastic. For me, I don't really mess with Teradek much anymore because of that. And that's just a personal preference of mine because I've had too many mishaps happening with Teradek products.
He also had, let's see, one more question here. He says, gosh, where is it? Any advice on how to attract advertisers and sponsors to his live show? You may not be familiar with his live show, and that information might be important for answering that question, but I guess we could talk about it in generalities.
Yeah. Well, then Marcella says the audio is off sync and on the live stream on Facebook, I guess. Yeah, because we're going through Skype. All right, so in the space, what was Eddie's question? It was in the space. I see too many people comparing. Is that what?
Oh no, I'm sorry. It's any advice on how to attract advertiser sponsors for my live show, and that may be unique to Marcelo too. It may be his connection that's causing a sync.
Yeah. Really, I think advertisers. Here's the thing with advertisers. There's so many rules and regulations. And, I don't know what kind of law that you practice, so you could probably really chime into this. There's so many legal things with advertisers. Like for Facebook has strict rules about advertising. They don't like pre-roll stuff. They want to see that there's a live, person there when you start the video. So if you have an intro, because I used to roll intros all the time, and they penalize you when they don't see a live person there. And I think a lot of times with advertisers, and I think with if you have a sponsored thing, you can show a logo of Coca-Cola for 15 seconds and then pop it back down with Facebook's rules. So everybody's like, I need advertisers. And 3 years ago, it was easy to do. I could say whatever I wanted. It was like radio, and I would take break commercials because we had the Jeff Adams show syndicated to an FM station. And so when we would go to break, I would roll video rolls into the live streams. Necessarily now you can't do that because each platform has different rules. YouTube wants some of your your advertising money if you have sponsor an advertiser. If you're making noise at YouTube, and Facebook's changing the rules constantly on this stuff. So finding the right advertiser, you really have to find someone that's going to be really flexible with where you're streaming to, because each platform is different with the rules and regulations about advertising. Because you have to play by their rules. Now, if you're just streaming to your website, which I do for the Jeff Adams show as well, you can do whatever the heck you want to do, So you got to know the platforms with advertisers, and that's the biggest thing. Now, there is we can get into that. I don't know if you know much about OTT development and the platforms with that, but I learned a lot about advertising through that. And, Facebook's free. Streamless Facebook's free. You got to play by the rules. You got to use their advertisers. They want to pre-rolls before your stuff. That's what they want, So initially, if you're doing a radio show and you're looking for advertiser or live stream show, you might need to find a new model or find the model that works for that platform, how they pay their content creators.
You know, I was at Podcast Movement, and somebody asked Michael Stelzner, you know, about how he gets people to advertise and promote through his company, Social Media Marketing World, or Social Media Examiner, I think is the company. But his answer is I don't. I create my own stuff and sell my own stuff. Cliff Ravenscraft said the same thing. He says, I don't go and promote everybody else's stuff. I create my own courses, my own products, and I create that. And it totally takes off the table worrying about finding people to pay you to have spots. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sure that in, you know, all the years you've been doing this, that certainly has been something that's crossed your mind, and maybe you've even done it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's worked for me, and maybe I'm going to let my magic sauce out, is I stopped worrying about the advertising aspect of it, and I started selling myself for the services that I have. So if I saw someone had a platform or a new app or an application, I would position myself as, hey, let's create a show based around your product, your platform. And so I would charge for the fee for either production or hosting or both, and create a show around that. And that, for me, you know, like stuff with the Jeff Adams show, it created with me to have a little bit more flexibility with that, because when I was doing that was my bread and butter. And with that, I stopped worrying about the advertiser aspect, because the other stuff I was doing was paying what I needed to do to have enough income coming through monthly for me. So I just think the advertising thing overall, there's so much, what's the word? I just, for instance, let's be real here, okay? Like Blog Talk Radio, I got a check from them because I would put the old Jeff Adams show. I got a check for them for 3 years ago, and with their new advertising system, the check was for like, it was crazy. It was like for 37 cents. It's like getting a music industry royalty check. Yeah, I just kind of laughed. And they just, you know, Spreaker and Blog Talk just merged, and they created this new model where there's this advertising thing that they created for podcasting, which is great. But I mean, you have to be like getting 1 million downloads to make any real source of, you know, getting advertisements off these platforms when they offer that. And it's not a hit to Spreaker or Blog Talk Radio. I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying overall, you know, 2 years ago I consulted Pink Sneaker Productions. They're a big TV reality show producing company, and they wanted to know about OTT. And OTT, if you don't know what that is, you know, that's Apple TV, Roku development, where you can have channels. And I said, yeah. They hired me on as consultant, and basically I got a college education for free because I had to do all this research. And I'll just give you a number, like for video, like, hey, I want advertisers. So if you took this to the next level, you went OTT and you started building an Apple TV, Roku channel, and you were looking at advertising. Same thing happens with Roku. If you're running ads or running commercials on Roku, Roku wants to take 70% of your income if you're running ads on your platform, which is crazy. And then, needless to say, too, there's a company called SpotX, and they run, like, if you watch something from ABC or Fox News and they show like a clip on the website on social media, you see like this commercial run through, SpotX is running all that. They find the advertisers. And to break it to you down like this to show you what kind of curve, it's the same thing with the video stuff, is you have to have pretty much 1 million downloads to make really any money, where you can make $8,000 off 1 million downloads off a advertising pre-roll with this company. And so when I was consulting this company, I basically said, look, you're going to spend like $2.5 million on branding yourself because you don't have that audience yet. And so a lot of it just comes down the audience. And, you know, everybody's complaining that TV money's, commercial money's out, you know, it's gone because companies are getting more bang for their buck, more hits, but the payment is less. They don't have to fork out $1 million to run a commercial, like all the Super Bowl ads that happened on Sunday night. They can get more bang for the buck on the internet because it's what killed the music industry too, with streaming laws, you know, and that's where you're at. So you have to have great numbers and a great following to really make any significant money on advertisers.
You're so right. And that's why, like, going to what I'm saying, what I heard at Podcast Movement with Stelzner and Cliff Ravenscraft, that, you know, you could have 100 listeners And if you've got a product, even if it's a $25 product, you're probably going to make more if one of those people buys your product. Then you're going to make the rest of the year trying to grow from that 100 and get an advertiser. I mean, it's so hard to get that audience going that why not try to find other ways to monetize other than that? I mean, it just seems that'll come if it comes, right?
Right. You know, and that's the thing. I mean, like Cliff, do you think Cliff makes a dime off his podcast? I don't think so. Cliff took a niche thing and said, you know, I'm going to be the podcast answer man, and I'm going to make my living doing that, which he's done successfully for years now, you know. And that's the crazy thing is, you know, and that's what I say. There's so much like information going out. There's these self-proclaimed experts that have like, hey, I got this, you know, I got this all figured out, but they don't have an OTT they're not into that, or they're not into the advertising. And everybody's looking for that. How do I make money doing this? And you got to really find your niche, because you can make money doing this. Believe it or not, whatever people say to you, you can do it, but it's not based on this advertising mindset. It's really, really not. And I know a lot of people are doing this full time and they're selling a product. They might have a book, they might have something that they're selling, they love live streaming and they're able to sustain themselves because they're selling what they're doing. And that's the number one thing. It's like you got to have that one thing that that makes you tick, your mission, your number one mission of what you do and why you're doing live streaming. And when you stay with that mission, you can make money doing this.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, let's turn a little bit. Gord asked or made another couple comments, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because this is something I often see people getting into the live stream game talking about, and that's, well, he mentions OBS, and we've talked about Wirecast a little bit here in this broadcast already. So it just seems natural for me to ask you, as trite and mundane as it might be, which do you prefer and why? I mean, if you were getting started in live streaming, would you encourage somebody to start with the OBS, or would you encourage them to start with the Wirecast? And I mean, there's a money difference, folks. Wirecast is at least $500. I don't know if 8 is more than that, but it was $500 for the entry level package, where OBS is free. And that's kind of the big difference between the two as far as, you know, where you get started. A lot of people start with OBS because it is free. But Jeff, if the budget was off the table, which would you recommend and why?
Well, start with the easy one there. I mean, that's going to be based on free. You know, OBS, you know, say what you want to say about it. It's free. So I'd be going with OBS. Very simple to use, and it gives you an understanding, you know, how to do an RNTP feed, you know, and know how to stream, and it gives you kind of a quick education for free how to do it. Well, your next level stuff is, you know, I always swing people to Wirecast or vMix, you know, versus if they have a PC, they can run vMix. vMix has got a lot of cool software. And then there's Wirecast, which you know, I think Wirecast for the beginners, vMix is really great too, but Wirecast is very simple to use. And there's so many tutorials for people to look at on YouTube, and the same with vMix, but vMix is a little bit more technical. It's not user-friendly like Wirecast is now, because when Wirecast redid their operating system, they made it really user-friendly.
Well, yeah, you know, I tend to agree. I started with OBS. Where I would steer people to Wirecast over OBS is because I think they both have extensive YouTube videos, if I'm not mistaken. But I really like paying $100 more and being able to call the toll-free number and talk to the experts over there every time I've had a snag. And I actually even will wait. Like, I'll try to figure something out for a couple days because I want to do it myself. But I have a phone number I can call if I've paid for that service, which is like $100 more, I think, for 1 year. But when I was a beginner, the time that I spent trying to solve things with OBS, if I would have just gone straight to Wirecast and ponied up $600, $500 for the software, $100 for the service. And folks, I'm not trying to sell Wirecast. I think I'm an affiliate, but I wouldn't even know what to tell you in order to cash in on my affiliate link. So I'm not trying to sell you, but, you know, I look at my time as valuable, and yeah, there's you know, taking your knocks is a good learning experience, but on the other hand, some of this can get quite frustrating, and you spend insane amounts of time figuring out something that a simple 3-minute phone call will solve. Right.
You know, and a lot of it's just like fine tuning, because that, you know, what I tell people too is like, I think I posted some on Saturday. It's like, you know, I said, I love when live streamers, experts outside of marketing get off their phone and get to more complex live streaming and they watch and fail. I saw some guy that, is this big live streaming marketer expert, and I saw him. I think he finally got it was either vMix or Wirecast, and he's on there. He had a big audience, and he's sitting there failing on his live stream. You can't hear him. And then when he switches camera, you could hear him, and everybody's like, "Hey, you got to fix it." And that's the crazy thing. Once you jump into that world, it's a whole different ball game of like learning the technology. And there's times where I fail a lot of times too. I don't have it all figured out because sometimes something gets clicked off on and you don't know, and it's just an ongoing thing. But man, know your craft, and because the number one thing that can take away your creativity, what you do best is the technology. And when you're like playing, because I play engineer, I play host, I play producer. I have all these wires. So if some technical happens for me, I go, I'm fried. I mean, I'm literally like fried. I mean, the show I did yesterday, I was fried. I had an audio ground loop because I rearranged everything in the studio, and there was like this hum, and I was trying to find it before the show, and I was just done. I was like, I got to host and produce this show. And so know your technology. Don't rush it. Watch a lot of tutorial videos, know it inside and out before you really put yourself in a position to put yourself out there. Because if you don't know how to fix something fast, you're going to look like a clown, and you got to be cool under pressure. I've had so many things shut down on me in live stream, but now I'm just kind of calm and cool and collective about it. What can you do? Like last week, my chair went down. I went, no, I shrunk.
Well, it's part of the curve, right?
Yeah.
Getting used to and dealing with the pressure. I mean, I know in the early days when I got started, panic and horror would just wash over me in an instant if somebody told me that the audio wasn't syncing right. And nowadays it's like, it's a negative, and I might give it a little bit of thought, but otherwise it's just like, it might be something I have no control over, or y'all try to get it right next time, or, it's very easy to get caught up in the horror in live streaming, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I used to put so much. I was a lot like you. I would get like pissed off, like, what's the audio video sync? Oh my god, and then you realize, hey, you're a common collective about it, because you said the live stream is just second priority here. This is a podcast. I'm recording a podcast here, so if something's going on, it's not my priority right now. I'm not making this the live stream show. This is for an audio podcast. So I used to freak out about that stuff all the time and get all frustrated and pissed off, and it would suck the life out of me, but that's the thing. There's so many things going on sometimes, and some people need to refresh things. And I used to stop shows like, everybody, can you check? And it takes away from your mission if you're sitting there doing tech control for just one person that might be hearing audio and video, which they might be really seeing, but there's nothing you can do about it because you hit the live button, you're recording. It is what it is at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, I think that sounds like a great place to round it out. Tell the folks where they can find you. If you've got any special announcements, you're welcome to share them now. But if they want to find Jeff Adams and see what you're up to and connect, where can they do that?
Well, they can do it at Facebook. I have the Jeff Adams Broadcaster page there. And then for the Jeff Adams Show, we have TGAS, a new media page there at Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's the Jeff Adams. At Twitter, it's the Jeff Adams. I mean, the reason it's not a cocky son of a gun, but there was so many Jeff Adams in the world, I had to put a the before it. So for branding. And then, I also have on Facebook, I just started a internet streaming specialist support group. And yesterday we hit 300 strong. So it's a great place if you're an internet streaming person, you want to go there and share ideas, having problems, technical problems. There's a lot of people communicating there, and it's growing strong. I can't even believe we're 300 people already in that group. So if you want to join that group, join that today if you got a passion for internet streaming. And there you go.
Well, listen, my friend, it is a great honor and feather in my cap to have you on, finally on my show. I love what you do. You inspire me every time you come across my feed and I see what you've got going on. It's just incredible, some of the stuff that you do and how much hard work you've put into this. And I admire it. And, I'm just thrilled to have had you on, my friend. Great time.
I appreciate you having me on, man. I knew it was a 2-month thing there, but we did it.
We got it done. It won't be as hard next time. Eddie Garrison, thanks for joining us. Todd T. Riley, Jeff JP, everybody else in the audience, thank you for joining us. Folks on the podcast, Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot. We got a lot of good stuff in today with Jeff Adams. And in a week, we will have somebody new. But until then, I will talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks so much for listening to Entrepreneur Live Video with Todd.LIVE. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit www.todd.live and on Facebook.com/Todd.LIVE page. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on Entrepreneur Live Video with Todd.LIVE.
Hello.
We're still streaming. Let me close it out here.